Hello there, and thank you for joining me here. My name is Tyler Penor, and welcome to part 2 of the Beyond the Horoscope miniseries. As we journey beyond the gates of astrology, we approach the birth chart. And with the wealth of information that's out there, we begin to study book after book. We go on the internet and we read all that we can about astrology. We realize that there's so much more than just what was presented to us on the outside. We realize that the birth chart has a sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, and all the planets with all the signs, and it's arranged in its own unique way. And so we begin to study this. We begin to look through the books and kind of almost like in a cookbook style, we take what's in our chart and we start to read all the different parts. We read about it. We read about the sun in this sign. We read about Mercury in this sign. And in this, the mind comes back in and challenges us once again. Which is the correct way? What is the right path? Do I follow Eastern or Western? Sidereal or tropical? Which house system is correct? And with all of this information, it's really easy to get overwhelmed and to feel like such a daunting task to really understand and grasp what astrology is all about. And perhaps we even turn back and leave back out the way we came, and we don't even look at astrology ever again. So the question is, which one is correct? Which path do I take? How do I learn astrology? What is going to be my approach to astrology? So these are the questions that we come across at this stage of the journey. So let's see if we can answer this. What is the path to take? With all of this information of astrology laid out in front of us, what's the first thing that we should do? At this point, we realize now that we want to go beyond the surface layer of astrology. We want to go beyond the sun sign, beyond the horoscope. And so with our birth chart, we begin that journey. And after the discovery of the birth chart, we're still at an information phase. All the things that we're learning and studying about is just information that other people have. And a lot of our astrology in the modern day too has been somebody else reformulating what someone else had told them. They just regurgitate what they themselves learned. See, in my opinion, what has happened to astrology is kind of like that game we used to play as a kid, the telephone game, where you say a phrase and you tell it to your friend and they pass it on, and by the time it comes back to you, it's no longer what it was originally. And I think this is what has happened with astrology, as many of us will just study astrology, we'll read a bunch of books, and then we'll decide we're going to do astrology. We are going to be an astrologer. And so we start looking at people's charts, and all we're doing is just telling them the information that we have gotten from these books, from our studies, and we just regurgitate it and tell it to them. Now, although nothing wrong with this, as we don't know any better, there is something more, there is something deeper, and there is more of a journey to go on. If we just stop here, we are now the ones that are building that gate of astrology and presenting the fortune telling or the predictions or the personality types. That's all we're doing. We're just building that wall bigger, and we're creating the perception that others have of astrology. And so I think it's due to this stage and people who are in this form of astrology just regurgitating the information that they have found. That's what limits our modern perception, because that's what people see from the outside. The people that stand just at the edge of the gate doing the predictions and the fortune telling style of astrology based on just the information that they have. So to move beyond this, we have to realize that we can't just listen to what others have to say. And it's just like that in life. Do we allow others to tell us who we are, or do we want to see it for ourselves? And that's the goal. You have to take this information of astrology and try and see it for yourself. So I did this for a long time. I studied everything that I could find about astrology. I read all of the books and studied Eastern, studied Western, and tropical and sidereal, and I realized that through this study that there is a golden thread that weaves all of it together. And with the mind saying, is it this way or that way, I realized actually that at the heart of it, it's all one, it's all the same. All of this astrological wisdom came from the same source, and within it there's the same fundamental pattern. That is why when we look at all the forms of astrology, they all utilize the fire, earth, air, and the water. They all have these same numerical patterns. And this is the key. This is what I realized, that there's a core fundamental pattern within astrology. And all astrology is doing is reflecting this core pattern of creation, the pattern of life that we witness around us. We see these cycles all around, and astrology is just a way that shows us the different layers as the seasons move, as the day moves. So really how the cosmos is built and structured, we're a part of that, and that's what I realized. So from this realization, I then said, well, I want to know how to see this for myself. This astrology that I've been studying, there is a truth to it, but I want to know more. I really want to know how to see this for myself. And so the question kind of arose, where did all of this come from? Where was the root of astrology, and how did it get to where it is now? And what I realized was that astrology and the pattern within it is reflected all around us. As the saying goes, as above, so below, and as within, as without. Now I think at this stage, a lot of us just get stuck on the as above, so below. And this is where we look up what's going on right now, what's going on in the sky, and then we try and look for it down here on earth outside of us. And we can see that. We see that there is a truth to that. And that's where those predictions come in. We can say, oh, these patterns are going on right now. We're going to probably see these same patterns down here on earth. And that's how the prediction model goes. But I thought of it as a step further. What about if it's as above, so below? What about as within, as without? And so I looked at that. The stars, the cosmos, the astrological patterns that we use with the signs, within them they have the elements of fire, earth, air, and water. And so I looked out in nature, I looked around me, and I saw fire, earth, air, and water. And I realized that we are comprised of these elements, that these elements give us life. So the way that they move is also the way we move. The archetypal patterns that we speak of up in the sky are written all in front of us with the way that nature moves, the way the plants move, the animals, and the relationship between the fire and the air and the earth and the water. So this is what I realized, that this is my path to continue learning astrology through these teachers. And that's what I realized, that the core teacher of astrology is nature. That all of the astrological wisdom came through the direct observation of these natural cycles, of these elements. So it was at that point on my own journey that I decided I would no longer learn from the books, that nature and the elements would be my guides and my teachers, that the fire would now teach me about the fire signs, the earth itself would teach me about the earth signs, and the air about the air signs, and the water about the water signs. And I realized, looking at the elements, that they all have these different ways of expressing themselves. And so it came to realize to me that everything I could ever want to know about astrology was written right in front of me in nature. And so that's where my real quest began. That's where I turned to try and awaken this vision of astrology, to see how it actually works and find the truth of it instead of just the information that I had gathered. It was now time to put the information into an experience, to take what I've learned about astrology and now try and learn from it. And that was my goal. How do I learn from astrology about life and not just learn about astrology itself? And that's the parallel that I realized, that astrology is just the pattern of life. And so when we study astrology, we study about life. And we are a part of that life. So studying astrology really is the study of yourself. And the more that you learn about astrology and the more you learn and see it out in real life and in nature, it's going to show you things about yourself. It's going to show you things about the people that you work with. And it's going to take your understanding of astrology to a whole nother level. It's going to take it from knowledge and transform it into wisdom. So now that is the new quest. How do I take this knowledge that I have of astrology, put it into a practice, and gain the wisdom? So the final realization was that there is no right or wrong astrology. all astrology came from different people who paid attention and observed how nature moved, how these cycles moved. And then they formulated their own wisdom and then shared that. So again, coming to the heart of the understanding here is that the mind challenges us, thinks there's a right or a wrong with astrology, but in truth, the heart is the way to go, and the heart unifies things. So there's no right or wrong way or right or wrong path with astrology. There's just your path, there's your truth and your understanding. And astrology is a tool and a vehicle to help you to find that, based on the wisdom that was presented from people who've carried this tradition from all the way in the ancient past to our present day here. You see, I realized astrology is a universal practice. All throughout time and in all different cultures, there's some form of astrology. And what is it really? It's just the way that their life moves. It's the way nature moves and the wisdom that we can take from that. So if you're at this stage now where you've gathered information and you don't know how to continue, or you maybe are doing consultations but you feel like there's something lacking, or you're just guessing things, you're just kind of piecing together this information. And if you want to take it a step further, I encourage you to turn to nature. Allow nature to be your teacher. Allow the elements to be your teacher, because they are where all of this stuff is playing out. And again, as above, so below, and as within, as without. So again, we are directly connected to nature. We are made of the elements. And so the way that the elements move and interact with one another can teach us about ourselves. And when we look at our chart, we see it all laid out. We see all the elements there laid out. And seeing that there's different types of fire signs, well, look at the fire. It expresses itself in different ways. There's a spark, there's the light and the flame, there's the heat and the charcoals. Same with the water. There's liquid water, there's frozen water, there's still water, there's the vapors and the clouds. So everything you could ever want to know about astrology is written right in front of us. So allow your experience to be your guide, and that is your path. Your path of astrology, for you to see it yourself, is for you to walk alone. You can use the information that you've acquired as your guides and begin to ask the questions now: how can I see it for myself? How can I gain this understanding and awaken this vision to where nature now becomes my teacher? See, I myself, when I go out into nature now, I constantly am learning more about astrology, how the inner workings of the signs and the houses and the planets are, just by observing nature. And the things that I learn, I could not find in a book. So now that we're at this stage, we have that understanding where now we know that there's more to astrology than the predictions and the fortune telling. We realize that there's a birth chart, and we've studied now and we understand the core pattern. We know the pattern from Aries through Pisces. We know how the solar system is built, and we understand the timing and the mechanism. So now we have this knowledge. So now the question arises, how do I put it into a practice and achieve this understanding that you're talking about? How do I awaken this vision? And how can I come to know these things without having to reference a book or my memory, and just have it be shown to me in my experience? Have nature and the elements reveal all the things that I'm searching for and the wisdom that I'm looking for. So now the question arises, how do I put this into a practice? And how do I practice astrology in an authentic way and with integrity? And if I'm going to be somebody who carries this wisdom, how do I actually achieve it and make it my own instead of just somebody else's knowledge? So these are the questions that we're going to address in the final video of this mini-series. How to get to the heart of astrology, how to awaken this way of understanding astrology to where the wisdom just pours in without having to read anything, and just being in tune and connected to nature and the elements and the natural cycles. So what does that rest of the journey look like? How do we get to that core point where that awakens? So So thank you for joining me here in part 2 of this mini-series. And I hope you'll join me in part 3, where we really try and wrap all of this up and come to the heart of this understanding of this living astrology path, and really learn how to awaken this vision for yourself. So there's a comment section below, and please leave your questions that you have or your comments, share your insights that you've learned. Tell me more about you and what you see for yourself with your own astrology path. What are you looking for, and how do you want to share it, and what wisdom do you hold? And if you know anybody who would enjoy this series or benefit from watching these videos, feel free to share this video. And that's going to be it here for part 2, and I hope to see you in part 3.